This is Business Rockstars. I'm Brittany Whitney, and my guest today is Mark Kohlenberg, founder and CEO of WDM Footwear and Accessories. Mark, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So for those who are not familiar with you and your entrepreneurial journey, give us some background on how you got to where you are today.
This is actually my third startup, so I've done two prior to this. I get bored easily, so I just wanted to come around and give it one more try with really an extraordinary brand of footwear and accessories.
Amazing. And what were your two startups before this one?
Honestly, kids-oriented, kids footwear. So the first was a joint venture with a German children's shoe company, and the second just a created children's shoe brand on our own in the United States with a group of investors.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And so for those who are not familiar with the Moral Code, which is a branch off of the business I mentioned earlier, tell us about what you guys do.
Well, I really started up and run the U.S. office of a parent company based in India, third generation company, really doing private label footwear for big European brands like Ecco, Mephisto, Lanvin, Loke, many of the better brands in Europe. And we really wanted a footprint in the United States. So here we really established a business with three different facets to it. Number one is our direct-to-consumer brand, which is Moral Code, which does better grade footwear for men and accessories as well, primarily leather accessories. Second, we license footwear. We've licensed the Robert Talbot brand of men's apparel and did their footwear. And third, we do a substantial private label business, both for retailers in the United States and also wholesalers, creating footwear and accessories for them, but under their labels.
That's great.
Yeah.
And what was the first step you took when you were serious about starting your third startup?
To me, it really all goes back to product. So you have to have extraordinary product. You have to check all those boxes. At the end of the day, the consumer is smart. They're going to figure it out. We want them to keep on buying it and be repeat buyers and coming back and telling their friends and colleagues about it. So without really extraordinary product to back it up, there's nothing. So I've been very fortunate that each one of my startups, I've had just phenomenal product to work with. So there's never anything to apologize for. You can go out with confidence, and the consumer does the work for you after that.
I was even saying when you were bringing out the shoes, I was like, it smells so good, like genuine leather.
which is a bit unusual now. Especially nowadays, you hear a lot about vegan leather, which in my opinion is a bunch of garbage. But vegan leather is plastic. So even the whole approach to leather footwear and investing, really in something that has longevity to it. We're also keeping footwear out of landfills. There is a degree of sustainability to it, even though it is made out of leather. But our Goodyear welted product can be resold indefinitely. So it's an investment that, honestly, you could have it for 20 or 30 years if you wanted to.
Which is so nice.
Yeah.
And what makes Moral Code different from all the other leather goods, shoes and accessories companies out there?
It's interesting. There's a bunch of direct-to-consumer brands that are in our space, and I've looked at many of them, and you can it's almost a formulaic type of a story behind it. A lot of them are run by investment bankers. They made their money. So the story goes, I couldn't find any adequate footwear for myself in the United States. I happened to be on a vacation to Europe, and look what I found. A shoe factory in fill in the blank. It could be Italy, it could be Spain, it could be Portugal, and I brought it back to the United States, at half the retail price. So the difference that I think we bring to the table is that longevity, that history of shoemaking. We're one of the few direct-to-consumer footwear brands out there with really a heritage of shoemaking in our staff. I've been in this business for 20 years plus, so and it may sound it may not sound that important, but you really want somebody that's making footwear with knowledge of fit, with knowledge of comfort, with knowledge of materials and construction. A shoe, it's not brain surgery, but a shoe, honestly, is a really difficult thing to make properly and really get people comfortable in it so it fits well. So that's really one of the fundamental points of difference between us and a lot of the other kind of also-ran brands that are out there. It's not just about style and price, but you really have to have that knowledge of shoemaking behind you as well.
Yeah. And how have you leveraged your experience in the shoemaking industry in other ways within your company?
Nowadays as we're growing quite rapidly, a lot of it is operational. It's outgrowing our supply chain. It's outgrowing our warehousing. It's beefing up our customer service. We've just opened a retail store. So, there's a lot of other things that really come into play. But once again, at the end of the day, if you don't have that extraordinary product behind you, it's smoke and mirrors.
Right. And what challenges did you face when you were starting Moral Code, and how are those different than the challenges you're facing today as your business is growing?
Great question. When we started Moral Code, we were an unknown. And even though, I have, many relationships with retailers and wholesalers in the country, you're really starting from scratch. So you need to establish yourself. You need to give legitimacy to the brand. And ultimately, people have to wear it and experience it and talk about it. In these days of social media, that's really what it's all about. So, there's a certain amount of time that you just need to get the product visible. We've been, pretty successful in going there, but every day you got to reinvent yourself and really go back and prove yourself. And, footwear is a seasonal product as well. So we have 2 opportunities every year to introduce a new collection, and you're only as good as that last 6 months.
Right. And how have you reached your audience?
We use a combination of things. One of the most effective, honestly, has been PR. We have a great PR agency in New York that, really has helped us tell that story in channels that are legitimate and really make sense to people. We've also established partnerships with, key fashion publications, Esquire, GQ, and even some of the more directed, online bulletin boards or emails such as Uncrate or Gear Patrol.
A lot of wantrepreneurs, people who want to start, grow, or fund a business, are afraid of failure, and they let that failure get in the way of following their passion. Were you ever afraid to fail? And if so, how did you overcome that fear of failure?
I'm afraid to fail every day, 24/7. I don't sleep well. I think if you're not afraid to fail, you're never going to push yourself out there and take risks. So a good friend of mine that's in the fashion business, his name is Harvey Kanter, just wrote a book called Choosing to Lead, Being Comfortable, Being Uncomfortable. I have 2 young adult children, and it's a conversation I have with them continuously, but nothing, from my perspective, nothing is awkward. I get turned down multiple times a day, every single day of the week, but unless you take those risks, unless you push yourself constantly and really go out there, you're never going to accomplish anything. So I just got to the point where I don't care anymore. So it makes it a little bit easier.
That is. That's a good attitude to have.
Yeah.
And you just opened a brick and mortar store.
We
Tell
did.
us about that experience.
It's actually, we will be launching a new direct-to-consumer brand called Milwaukee Boot Company.
Okay.
So we're headquartered in Milwaukee. 100 years ago, Milwaukee was really the center of shoemaking and leather production in the United States. Lots of shoe factories, but a really rich history in shoes and leather. So the name of our retail space is Milwaukee Boot Company. And although right now it just has Moral Code product in there, shoes and accessories, come July of next year, we'll be introducing a whole new collection of footwear under the Milwaukee Boot Company label, and that will be integrated into that retail space as well. But really cool space, and literally just opened 2 or 3 days ago.
That's so exciting. Well, I'm excited to see where it is in the future.
Me too.
And if you could give one piece of advice to your younger self, what would you tell yourself?
Don't be scared to fail, and tenacity. I'm a really competitive person, but inherently I'm also a very shy person. So it's extra challenging for me to sell product, to cold call, to knock on that door. But that tenacity, that never giving up, just really believing in that product or brand that you have, it opens doors. And I think that kind of that honesty and genuineness that you bring to the table, if you truly have passion behind your product and your brand, it pays dividends in the future.
Absolutely. Well, Mark, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Where can people purchase your products besides the brick and mortar store?
They can go to www.moralcode.com, and the product is out there. And pretty soon, Milwaukee Boot Company, company spelled out, .com, will serve the same purpose as well.
That's great. Well, Mark, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
This is Business Rockstars. That was my amazing guest, Mark Kohlenberg, founder and CEO of WDM Footwear and Accessories.